We are all governed first by one thing, and that is the country that we were born in. If you're born in Canada or Australia or Europe, life's going to be pretty much okay. But if you're born in the backwoods of Bangladesh or the jungles of Cambodia, you can be fairly certain your life is going to suck. So be thankful, all of you that are here today, that you were born in a country that can give you what you're enjoying and allowing you to be here today. A little background about myself. I'm from a middle-class working family. My father was a milkman back in the days where the milkman actually delivered your milk to your front doorstep. And I grew up in a very loving, secure, safe family. And when I saw what kinds of lives children led in other parts of the world, it had a huge impact upon me. I was going out in my early 20s with a guy. We were engaged and about to get married, and he sent me off for fertility tests, and it came back that I could never ever have my own children. So I got dumped practically at the altar. And this was devastating for me. I dreamed of being a mother, and I thought, well, if I can't have children, I'll join the Department of Foreign Affairs and have a life of travel and see countries all over the world. I fancied myself swanning around in a black cocktail dress at National Day receptions, getting seduced by James Bond types. That's how I thought it would be like. But it was far from that. My first posting was in Cambodia, just at the beginning of the war in 1970. I was 25 and I'd never even seen as much as a fist fight, let alone a full-scale war. I went on to other postings, working for ambassadors and diplomats in the Philippines, in Thailand, in Iran, and in America. But Cambodia always held a special place. It's a bit like your first lover. You never really get over them. Cambodia is about the same size as Tasmania, and it has a population of 21 million, and there are 6 million landmines still there unexploded. So you can imagine how that impacts on rural life and how much land cannot be used to grow rice. I was there, first time that I went there, the second time, I had a military escort to go in because the Khmer Rouge were still active, and the government in Cambodia gave me a military escort from the town of Surin to get into Cambodia. And I'd eaten something that was not agreeing with me, and I really needed to go to the toilet. And I had this little Jeep with a rocket thing on the top and 4 soldiers and somebody sitting on the back with the B-40 rocket and everything. I felt really safe. And there were skull and crossbone signs all along the road to tell you that don't get out your car because there's landmines here. But I had to go to the toilet, so I got my trusty roll of toilet paper, which I carry with me everywhere, and I stopped the car, and I got out because I saw this little winding track leading to a village, and I thought, well, that track must be safe. That's where the villagers walk. So I got out, and then there was this little soldier. He weighed about 40 kilos, and he put his big machine AK-47 gun in front of me, and he said, no. And I'm crossing my legs, and I'm waving the roll of toilet paper, and he's menacing me with this machine gun and saying no. And I was in real deep trouble. And he told me, Commander say me, if you die, I die. So Madame, shit here. Which is what I had to do. I really had no choice. So that was the beginning of my second entry into Cambodia. I can't talk about Cambodia without talking about the carpet bombing during the war. The Nixon and Kissinger doctrine of the carpet bombing killed more than 1 million innocent farmers. And it's too late for me to punish Nixon, but if I go to America, I would love 10 minutes in a room with a stick with Kissinger. In my opinion, Kissinger should be in The Hague answering for crimes against humanity. Not many people know that there was more tonnage of bombs dropped in Cambodia than was dropped in Japan during the entire length of World War II. And it's such a tiny country, and it suffered so much. I've got to tell you about Pol Pot. A lot of you here might not know about the Pol Pot years, but from 1975 to 79, this crazy man called Pol Pot took over the country, foreigners were expelled, and he forced all the people in the cities out into rural areas. If you wore glasses, it meant you could read, so you were killed. If you had any skill at all or could read or write another language, you were killed. He burnt all the money. He burnt all the pagodas. He killed all the monks. He burnt all the books in the library. Money was abolished. I could go on about what Pol Pot did in that country. He brought it back to what he called year zero. And more than 2 million people died during that time of 4 years out of a population of 7 million. And I can't think of another country that's been decimated as much as poor old Cambodia. I went on, my last posting was in Washington, DC, and after 18 years with the government, I was getting a bit jaded with things political, and I had a wonderful lifestyle because the work was fascinating, the social life was fabulous, the living conditions were great, but I'd come home from a nice dinner party and I'd go to bed and there'd be a hole in my heart. And it was, I used to say to myself, well, is this all there is, Geraldine? Is this it? So I thought I'd resign from public service and go to Sydney, where I got a good job with Chase Manhattan Bank, a big American bank in Sydney, where I enjoyed a life of materialism and consumerism. I used to think that you weren't really a woman if you didn't have a mink coat. So I went to the fourier and I couldn't decide whether to get the grey one or the black one, so I got both of them. I had diamonds, I had an emerald ring, I had rubies and gold and fabulous jewellery. And I remember once when I was going to work on the ferry, I noticed that my ruby ring didn't match my emerald earrings. Oh God, I can't go to work with mismatching jewellery. So I got off at the next stop and went home and changed my jewellery so that it all matched. I hosted at home expensive catered for dinner parties, and my life was all about me. I never gave to World Vision, I never gave to Save the Children, I never gave to Red Cross. Everything that I earned went on my back or on my fingers, first class ticket holidays, and it still left me with that hole in my heart when I went to bed of a night. I went back to Cambodia on a holiday in 1993 and saw with my own eyes that the country had not moved forward at all. And I was struck with the feeling that I just had to do something. And it was on that trip that I first met 24 children that had been rejected from a refugee camp because they were orphans and nobody wanted to take care of them. And the minute I saw these 24 children in shocking conditions, it was like a bomb in my head. This is what you're supposed to be doing, Geraldine. And from that day on, the children of Cambodia have been my life. My work back at the bank must have suffered a lot. I remember one time I started getting faxes from the people who were running the orphanage. They'd send me faxes saying with the pictures of the children, and one day my boss came in and the fax paper had run out, and all these faxes were from the children in Cambodia, and he couldn't get his numbers from New York. So I knew that my job was getting in a very precarious situation. So it wasn't long before I was fired 3 weeks before my 50th birthday. And, this was pretty bad for me because I'd not saved any money. I put everything on myself. And here I was without a job. I didn't have a rent for my lovely rented apartment. And so I reached a crossroads in my life where I had to decide what I was going to do. And it wasn't hard for me to decide to move back to Cambodia. I had good contacts in the government, and I got a job working for Prince Norodom Ranariddh, who was then the son of King Sihanouk. So I worked for him in his government office, and on the weekends I played mum to his wife's orphanage, and my life was pretty good until the military had a bloody coup and overthrew the royal family who I was working for. So I was in a really, really dangerous situation. And it's funny about danger. You often don't know you're in danger until the danger is over and you look back and you think, oh my God, what was I doing there? The problem during the coup is that the orphanage where the kids were had been a military orphanage that the royal family had taken over from the military. And the soldiers in the military, the royal family had all fled at this stage, and they were out at the orphanage trying to shoot us out of the land. And then I had 60 children. And they came out one day in two tanks with soldiers with B-40 rockets and AK-47 guns, and they were pointing their guns at the children, and the children were kneeling in the dust saying, don't kill us, because they wanted their land back. And I was there, and I knew that if we walked out of there, there was nowhere for us to go, there'd be no water, nothing. So I stood up to the soldiers, and when I'm angry, my Cambodian becomes very, very good. And some of these soldiers were only about 18 or 19 years old, and I was saying to them, does your mother know what you're doing here today? And it wasn't sinking in at all. And the head soldier looked at me, and he leaned forward, and he really, really looked me up and down, and then he put his gun down, and he nudged the soldier next to him and whispered to him, and that soldier looked at me, put his gun down, and nudged the next one. There were 6 of them. And in the end, after a few minutes, all the soldiers had put their guns down. They got on the 2 tanks and went. And the kids were wetting themselves with fear, and we all went back into the dining room, and after a little while, the older boys started to laugh. And I said, why are you laughing? We all nearly got bloody killed there. And the boys said, oh, Mum, it was your hair that saved us. And I said, explain. And they said, well, in Cambodia, we're a very superstitious people. We believe in ghosts and goblins and potions and witches. And he said there's a very, very famous witch in Cambodia where the women go to when their husbands are unfaithful, and she turns their husbands' penises to the size of a pea as a punishment. And she's got bright red hair. And the kids reckon there's not many people in Cambodia with hair my colour, and they reckon the soldiers thought we're not taking any chances here. And I now travel backwards and forwards from Australia to Cambodia, and you can be sure there's half a suitcase of red hair dye. I'm going to be this colour until the day I die. But let me tell you about some of my children. There's Panya, who saw his mother step on a cluster landmine, and a cluster landmine shreds the person that it steps on. There's nothing left to see. And poor little Panya, he didn't know that it was a man-made bomb. He just saw the earth blow his mother to pieces. And when he was brought to us, there were 5 others in his family. He wouldn't walk on the ground. He was perfectly normal in every other way, but you had to lift him from the dining room to the dormitory to the toilet. He wouldn't put his legs down. And I said to his brother, why won't he walk? And he said, my mum, he's afraid that the ground's going to kill him like it killed his mother. And it took little Panya 6 months to trust the ground. And he was in someone's arms at the dormitory, and I was at the dining room, which was about that far away. And I yelled out, Panya, and he jumped out of the person's arms and ran across the ground into my arms, and it was just a fabulous moment for me. Then there's 3 little girls called Lani, Lena, and Sina. Their mother brought them to me, and she said, Madame, she said, we haven't eaten or drunk anything for 4 days, and my husband was killed by a landmine. I've lost my job, and yesterday a man offered me $600 for my eldest 9-year-old girl to go into a brothel. And she said, I would never sell my girls, but if we don't eat tomorrow, I may have to sell the eldest one to save the other 2. Will you take them? And I did. And there's women like that all over Cambodia in situations like that where they just cannot care for their children, and their children are often lucky enough to be taken in by us. If your mother survives your birth with no complications, you're tasked to survive the next 5 years of your life without succumbing to AIDS, hepatitis B, malaria, tuberculosis, dengue, malnutrition, or a variety of gastroenteritis problems. And at 6 years old, if you're hardy enough to survive all of that, you may be one of the hundreds of thousands of children whose parents cannot afford to send you to school. and your life will start a hand-to-mouth existence, eking out a living on the land or from the lakes and the rivers. Working in Cambodia for a living, just to eat, is common for many children. It is accepted, as most often there is just no other alternative. And it's not the choice of any parent that their child has to work alongside them. But these are grueling days and there's just no other choice. Cambodia has taught me one thing, and that is to not waste my precious time and energy on thinking about things I cannot change. You would go nuts in Cambodia because there's so much that needs changing. So I just concentrate on the children whose fate it is to walk through those sunrise gates. At sunrise, I've got children with polio, blind, aplastic anemia, which is a blood disease caused by Agent Orange, various degrees of cerebral palsy, rickets, and I have 2 young girls who've been terribly disfigured in acid burn attacks. And the resilience of these children has to be seen to be believed, and the way the other children in Sunrise accept them and nurture them is just wonderful to watch. It's not something I've taught them, it's just come from a Buddhist belief in compassion and caring. And caring for a child born in a country like Cambodia and many others like it in the emerging world is challenging, to say the least. But so are the rewards when you succeed in taking a healthy, normal 6-year-old to school for the first time, as happens in Sunrise. I just wished it happened more often. And the children come to us in many ways through abandonment. They're left behind in hospitals, abandoned at rubbish dumps, cruelty, domestic violence. Many of them are trafficked over the border into Thailand, into prostitution, illegal adoption rings, slave labour and begging rings. And the Thai authorities round them up every now and then, and because they're illegally in the country, and then they bring them to the border to camps there where they're eventually taken to places like Sunrise. And I've got to tell you about one little boy that we got from there. His name is Thai. He was 9 when he came to us, and he's got cerebral palsy, and he can't walk. He's seriously crippled, but his mind is fine. And his mother sold him, and he'd been with us for a while. And every year I do an update for the sponsors to let them know, you know, little Jimmy's doing this, doing that, and his best friend is this, and so on. It's fairly boring stuff. So this year I thought I'd do something a little bit more sexy for the sponsors. So the question I asked all the children was, if you could be alone with Buddha for half an hour, what would you ask him for? And the big boys are saying, oh, they want motorbikes and cars, and the girls are saying they want nice clothes and jewellery and a rich husband, and it was lovely. They were all the predictable things, and we got to little Thai, and he's sitting on a chair, swinging his deformed legs, and I said, darling Thai, what would you want? And he looked at me and he said, oh, Mum, I don't need anything, I don't want anything. And I said, you must want something. And he said, no. And I said, I've got to put something on this form, so come up with something. So he looked up at the sky, and then he looked at me, and he said, well, Mum, there's just one thing I really want. And I said, what is it, darling? And he said, I would ask Buddha to make me a very, very, very good person in this lifetime, because I must have done something really, really bad in my previous lifetime for my mother to not love me and throw me away, and for me to not walk like other kids. So if Buddha makes me good in this lifetime, in my next lifetime, maybe I'll have a mother who loves me and I won't be crippled. These are the sorts of stories that I hear every day that bring me to tears. Wow, an amazing girl. She's now 20. She came to us when she was 10. Her mother sold her into a begging ring, and she was working in Pattaya, and she was living in a big house where a whole lot of other beggars lived, and they were in a ring and they were dropped around every day at the marketplace. And after a few months, Wow was not getting enough money in her tin. So what happened next? Back in the house, they threw acid all over her face. She lost an eye and an ear and has horrible facial injuries because they thought that would make her a better beggar. She was out on the street again the next day, no hospitalisation, no pain management, nothing. And she still wasn't getting money, and she was in the street the car didn't come back to pick her up overnight as it usually did, and she was just a 7-year-old girl. She didn't know how to get home. And eventually the Austrian consul saw her in a shocking state, took her to a hospital and had her treated, and eventually little Wow came to us. And she is the most delightful, resilient, intelligent child. She's now 20 and she's studying nursing, and she's now out of Sunrise in an outreach house, so she gets to see people in the street. And she said, oh, people point at me all the time, Mum, and they say, oh, ugly, monster, ugly. And she says, I turn around to them and I say, what I look like is not who I am. Now, what a delight this girl is going to be. Another girl who was burnt purposely with acid as tea, and her mother was having an affair with a man in the village, and the wife found out, and the wife came and threw a gallon of battery acid over the mother and child while they were sleeping. The mother and T had to be taken to the hospital, and T had to be actually cut off her mother because they'd fused together during the attack, and the mother died, and T's got 80% burns over her body. And she is not as resilient as Wow is, and it's going to take some time to build up her confidence. And this is what happens in countries like Cambodia. You can buy battery acid, over the counter. You can't do that in modern countries. But I also have my successes. My first boy just graduated in Sydney from the Cordon Bleu International Hotel Training School. And I went to his graduation, and he's standing at a table like this in a nice smart blazer and a tie, one of those funny stand-up hairstyles, talking about his life in Sunrise and how he's happy to go back to Sunrise and work there. And when you're a mother and you see a child of yours perform like this, my heart was beating so loud I thought the whole room could hear it. But all I could see while he was talking, he came to us because his father killed his mother in a gambling fight. And he and his 3 sisters came to Sunrise, and he still had the mud up his legs from the rice paddy on his legs. And here he was now getting a degree from Sydney University. How good was that? I have girls now in hotels working as dental nurses, insurance business. The boys are car mechanics, doing computer repair, web design, AutoCAD design. They're working at the ANZ Bank. They're doing IT positions, engineering, architecture and medicine. And these are at the local universities. And these are the children that are going to lead Cambodia out of the mist. And I'm so proud that they're all mine. A lot of the older children have married and have got children of their own. And what we provide at Sunrise, the kids get up in the morning at 5, have half an hour exercise, they have their breakfast, they clean up the mess from the day before, they go to school on the bus, and they come back at 11 o'clock, have lunch, little ones have a nap, the bigger ones do their washing, and from 1 to 5 we have our own programs of English, computer, traditional music and dance, and agriculture. 5 o'clock we have dinner, and then there's 1.5 hours free time, and then we meet again at 7 o'clock in the dining room as a family and discuss the day, who's been bad and how they should be punished. The children choose the punishments for each other, and it's just like a big family meeting every night, and they are my family. I used to put Sunrise in a pink bubble and say to myself, well, Geraldine, you can't help everybody in Cambodia. So I refused to look at all the misery around me every day when I was driving around. Even the villages that are right up against our fence were in an appalling position. And I hate it when people have good ideas and they're not mine. My manager said, look, Geraldine, most of the farmers outside are subsistence farmers, and they have to keep their primary age school kids at home to look after the littlies. Why don't we open a nursery school at Sunrise? The littlies can come to us, and that frees up the primary school kids to go to school. What a win-win situation. So we now have hundreds of kids coming to the nursery school, and their brothers and sisters can now go to a primary school. So this is how we started our community development projects. We are now moving into the community, like you could see from that short film. We're building wells. We're sending kids to school on bikes. We're taking sick people to hospital. We're improving houses. We're renovating schools that are falling down, building small bridges, and doing so much more. And my life is even richer now that I can open my heart to the poor people in the villages around us. I need to raise a total of $140,000 US every month, and I see that figure written down, and it gives me a real scare every time I see it, $140,000 US. But I'm not alone. I have wonderful Khmer staff who support me, and many of them are Khmer Rouge survivors, and they are also my family. I don't regard them as staff. They're part of our family. When new kids come to us, they are either brought by village leaders or from the Ministry of Social Affairs, and when they come through the gates, they are so frightened. Some of them are only 7 years old, and their lives are totally out of their control. And they come through the gates and they see me, this big white woman with, red hair, and they're frightened of me, not because of what I look like, but because I'm an adult. And every adult in their life has harmed them. And they're looking at me thinking, well, what's this one going to do? And sometimes it takes months for those children to give me eye contact, much less pick them up. And then in time, the older kids say, look, she's not too bad, the old duck, she doesn't hurt us. And one day I wake up and one of the new children who hasn't even let me pick her up before has curled up beside me in my bed and taken a nap, and I know I've won another little heart. But the fear and suspicion of distrust that I see in these children's eyes just shouldn't be there. And I tell them when they arrive that everything is all right, the worst part of your life is over, it's all right now. Everything will be all right. But I need help to keep that promise. It takes money for me to make everything be all right. Often people praise me and say that I've sacrificed my life for the children of Cambodia. Nothing could be further from the truth. These children have saved me from an empty life of materialism and consumerism and self-absorption. Pre-Cambodia, if you had to choose one word to describe me, the word would be hedonism. And hedonism means a person who seeks pleasure. And I'm still a hedonist, I just seek my pleasure in a different way. I've never had less materially, and I've never been more rich. I'm going to retire and die in Cambodia, and it's going to be a pleasure. I look at my friends who are in retirement villages in Australia, and I'm horrified. I'm looking forward to growing old in Cambodia because it's a privilege in Cambodia to look after an old person, because during that Pol Pot time, all the people that should be 70 and 80 are not there anymore. And if you see an old person, they're quite rare. And we might be on a field trip and the kids will say, oh, look, Mum, old person with white hair over there. And it's a joy to look after an old person, and I know that kids will care for me with love and not out of obligation or gratitude. And I don't know many people at the age of 70 who are looking forward to growing old the way that I am. I'm loved, respected, needed and challenged, and I feel young and creative. I don't feel 70, I feel 30. The body sometimes feels 70. I know I'm doing what I was born to do, and I know so many people go through their whole lives and they never reach that realisation of knowing that they're doing what they were put on this earth to do, and I pity them. I love my life, but I do admit there's one little grey spot. I can be lonely with just the kids around me. I cremate children on a fairly regular basis, and it would be nice to have a man to comfort me. We do wedding receptions for the kids, and I'm getting a bit tired of dancing at the wedding receptions with the 12-year-old boy. It would be nice to have a man to dance with. I travel a lot, and I drag a 30-kilo suitcase around with me, and it would be lovely to have a man argue about the excess baggage and stand in the queue while I sit and have a coffee. So what I'm planning to do is to go onto an internet dating site and it will say a 70-year-old woman with a double mastectomy, sleep apnea, a heart condition, lives in rural Cambodia with 400 children, seeks man for cremations, weddings and travel. Now, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it soon just to see how many weirdos are going to reply to that. I am optimistic about Cambodia's future. Every year I see it moving ahead. And from when I first saw it in 1970 to today, it's unrecognisable. And I have great hopes for its future and for the future of my children and their children. I'm not religious. We keep all the children Buddhist. At the opening of the orphanage, when I then had 70 children and the Prime Minister Hun Sen gave me land to move to, and he came out and he opened the orphanage, it was a huge day for me. And at the end of the day, when everybody had gone home and the light was going, it was almost dark, I was sitting outside under a little gazebo with a plastic cup of warm, flat champagne in my hand. And I looked out at what had been created, and I just couldn't believe it. And I thought, Geraldine, you couldn't have done all this by yourself. You had to have some supreme power guiding you and helping you. So I got down on my knees and I thanked Jesus, I thanked Buddha, I thanked Allah, I thanked Krishna, and I thanked Roshana and any other god that I didn't know, because I figured I needed to thank all of them because I'm sure they were all involved. My wealth and my richness is in the eyes of the children I see every day. I have thousands of precious moments, like the day Panya ran into my arms, like the days the small children finally trust me and come and take my hand and sleep with me. When some of the earlier children who are nearing 40 continue to return to talk about their problems, work life and loves, makes me feel even more of a mother. Nothing is like the unconditional love of a child. You all have to find your joy and passion in life. If you don't, you're only half alive. And it can be anything. It can be bringing up a happy, loving family. It can be in business. It can be in the arts. It can be in academia. It can be in travel. It can be in sport. It can be in politics, or it can even be your religion. But find that button that switches you on every day when you get out of bed in the morning and embrace it. Don't wait till you're 50 to find the wealth of a different kind like I did. I was 50 before I did anything for anybody, and that's critical. And I'm ashamed of that and trying to make up for it real fast. I drive around in a beat-up old four-wheel drive, and I've got a driver who says I must have a bodyguard because anyone that drives a four-wheel drive and is white is often robbed. And I said to my driver, darling, if you can find me a bodyguard that weighs more than me, I'll employ him. And they're still looking. A lovely story, Repro. He's now dead. He fell off a motorbike without wearing a helmet, but when he was about 10, and we had a special bond, and he was really struggling to speak English with me, and we have wonderful sunsets at sunrise. And we were sitting on the back steps, and he said to me, Mum, the dark in Cambodia, very big. When Mum's here, the dark not big. And these are things I will remember for the rest of my life. The part I hate most is turning kids away. I had an old woman come to me. She had a shaved head, threadbare clothes, and she was holding the hand of her 8 or 9 year old grandson, who was coughing up copious amounts of blood at the gate, and it was clear he was in the last stages of TB. And she said to him, I love my grandson, but I can't afford the $6 to cremate him. Will you please take him, and I know he'll have a proper Buddhist funeral. And I looked at this kid. There was no way I could take him because it's a very infectious disease. I couldn't give her the $6 because if I did, everybody from the surrounding villages would be coming for $6 to cremate their family members. And I had to say to this woman, I'm sorry, darling, you'll have to go somewhere else. And this was the woman that would have been born during the French period. She survived the Vietnam War. She survived the terrible years of Pol Pot, the coup of '97, and all she wanted was a Buddhist funeral for her godson. And 2 tears just rolled down her face and she turned away and she said, "Where is somewhere else?" And I went inside and had 2 triple gin and tonics, because these are sometimes things that I can't cope with on a daily basis. Things that happen in Cambodia are indescribable. One girl was brought to us. She'd been raped, and the man that had raped her couldn't enter her because she was so tiny, so he cut her open with a knife. I know it's hard for you to believe that things like this happen, but they do. The other thing, when I thought nothing could shock me about Cambodia, was down at the riverside where all the tourists go. There was a man walking around with a manila folder of pictures of disabled children, children in wheelchairs with no legs, no arms from landmine accidents, people with elephant heads, terrible disfigured and disabled children. He's going around to people saying, "You want sex with disabled child? You choose which one you want and I fix." And I think, what kind of a world are we where there are people out there that even want to do something like that? But they're there. The worst story is Noodles. I'm fairly well known in the marketplaces, and I was in a marketplace called the Russian Market, buying some silk to take home to sell. I was going home on a fundraising trip. And my silk lady said to me, "Oh, Mum," she said, "there's a little boy been abandoned here a couple of weeks ago on a noodle stall, and we've called him Noodles. Come and have a look at him. Maybe you can take him back to Sunrise." So I went to the noodle stall, and there was this beautiful, fat, 8-month-old baby, and I looked into his big, lovely brown eyes, and I said, "Noodles, I can't take you today. I've got to go off on a fundraising trip. I'll come back and get you in a week." I came back. I'd been back about 10 days, and I thought, I better go back and get Noodles. And I went back to the market, and if you could imagine how I felt when I looked into his eyes to find that people had dug his eyes out and sold his eyes on the black market for the corneas. And I thought, what kind of world are we living in? And I really lost my temper at the market. I was throwing noodles and plates and glasses everywhere, and the people who were looking after him at the noodle stall picked him up and ran away with him, and I, to this day, don't know what happened to Noodles. And he's one of the boys that I failed. And from now on, if I see a child in need, I don't wait. I take them on that very day. Now, in this room, I look at your faces and your intelligence, and it's exciting for me to know what you're going to achieve in your life. There could be heads of state in this room. There could be people who are going to cure HIV, who are going to cure AIDS. There are people in this room who can cure cancer, who can clean our rivers and fix up our environment. Mother Nature is clearly not happy with any of us. My generation couldn't do it. You have to. I'm totally unqualified to do what I do. I'm the most uneducated person in this room. I didn't even finish grade 9. And if I wanted to do what I'm doing in Cambodia in Australia, and I went to the authorities, they'd say, "Well, that's nice, Geraldine. Where's your teaching degree, your social work degree? Are you a nurse? What are your qualifications?" And I say, I don't have any qualifications. But when you stop and think about it, when you're a parent, as many of you will be, you don't have a book. What you do with children is you shelter them. You feed them, you clothe them, you educate them, you keep them clean, you discipline them, you teach them the difference between right and wrong, you protect them and you comfort them. You hug them and you kiss them and you wipe away their tears. You play with them, you make them laugh and you encourage them. You fight their battles for them. You make them feel safe. You support them and you find their talents and nurture them. You forgive them, you believe in them, you trust them and you guide them. You tell them they have a future, but most of all, You tell them that you love them and that you will always be there for them. Where is the need for a university degree in that? My book is on sale through my website, which is on the brochures at the back of the room. It's a really, really good read. And if any of you can afford a one-off donation that will help me reduce that $140,000 US a month, I'd be very, very grateful. But before I close, my kids always ask me to pass on a blessing from them to the people who might give money or help them. So from all the Sunrise children, they wish all of you and your families the 5 precepts of Buddhism. They wish all of you long life, health, strength, wisdom, and what we need most in the world. They wish you peace.
You know that you already said that you can save all the people in the world. But how do you deal with the guilt that you can save that somebody?
Who can, what, who?
How do you deal with the guilt that you can save that person, you know? If you find someone...
How do I deal with the problems facing every day? Yeah, I read a lot, I play music a lot, and I probably drink a little bit more than I should. Gets me through the day. What I love about Cambodia is every day that I wake up, I know I'm going to laugh, I'm going to cry, I'm going to hug, I'm going to be hugged, I'm going to be angry. You never know what Cambodia is going to bring you. It tugs at all your emotions, and you really know you're alive. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It wasn't like that for me in Australia.
I'm wondering what the impact of tourism has been in Cambodia, because recently it's become quite a popular backpacking destination and also a lot of volunteer tourism. Has that had a positive effect in Cambodia?
The volunteer tourism?
Yes, things like that.
There's good and bad. There are a lot of volunteers who come and they just haven't got anything to do for a day, so they say, let's go to an orphanage. They are counterproductive. And then there are volunteers that go and do something productive and teach. But many of the long-term volunteers are destructive because if they stay a long time and like do a gap year or something like that, when they leave, the children feel abandoned all over again. So anyone who wants to volunteer and visit an orphanage in Cambodia, be responsible. Google the organisation. If they don't have a website, they're pretty much corrupt, and don't give money to them unless they give you a receipt, because there's a lot of bogus orphanages there.
I guess I'm just asking you as someone who works in this field, is there a demand for that kind of thing, and is this even possible?
Yes, we are, before this year's over, we are inviting teachers to come and teach not just English, but maths and all different kinds of languages to teach the teachers. And they'll be engaging more with the teachers than with the children. And when they leave, they'll leave behind highly educated teachers, which they don't have now. Now everything is by rote, and the teachers don't really know any other ways of teaching. We're looking for students that can support themselves, or qualified teachers that we don't have to pay, that are true volunteers. And that might be a bit of a problem because we can't pay the volunteers that will come. But there's definitely an opening there for people to come and teach the teachers. So good luck with that.
When you take that big decision to develop the village, how you manage your time for them and for yourself and always for your family? Thank you.
How did I manage what?
Your time and yourself for Cambodian and your...
It wasn't a choice. For me, it was my fate. I never ever made a conscious decision to stay with the children. It happened. I'm lucky in having family that I have been away from for many years with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Travel, so I didn't feel that they needed me to stay in my country. I did end a marriage so that I could be with the children because it was more rewarding for me to do that. But it wasn't a conscious decision, it just happened. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Here's a question I'm curious about for a long time to you. What influenced you to do one thing when you were very young?
What made me do this?
What influenced you to insist on these things? They help the children, their help the homeless people. Yes, thank you.
Well, what influenced me to get into this field was the great loss I feared and had to accept by not having my own children. I had surgery, I had treatments, I had everything, and it was very clear the universe was not going to give me my own children. So that's what led me down this path. I wanted children in my life. I didn't quite know how I was going to get it, but the universe rewarded me in this way. But everything that I've done, I've been influenced by not being able to have children.
My name is Rico. I'm from Indonesia, and I want to ask you, as the children is like getting older, and then someday they have to like leave you.
Yep.
What does you feel in like losing them?
Every mother has to let their children go sometimes. When our kids turn 18, they can't stay in an orphanage. So we've set up an outreach house where the boys and girls who, when they turn 18, they go, and we have paid mother and father to take care of them. Because what happens is that children might come to us and they could be 11 and they've never been to school. So they'll start grade 1 when they're 11. So when they're 18, they might only be in grade 9 or 10 through no fault of their own. So we commit to them. We'll put you in the outreach house and we'll continue to support you in every way, and you'll go to the same school as your friends from Sunrise. And the deal is, as long as you pass each year, we'll continue supporting you until you get grade 12. But if you fail a grade and you're 21 and you fail grade 11, the party's over, but we find you vocational training. So no kid ever leaves us without some kind of skill. The ones that pass grade 12, they move into another outreach town in the city, and we support them to go to university.
Okay.
So no one ever really leaves us.
Okay.
And when they get married, they come back and bring their kids, and it's just like being a mum and a grandma.
Just with your advice about how much time you should be spending with organisations like yours, I was a little bit confused. Were you saying, like, you seem to be saying that you shouldn't be staying there for a really short time, and if you shouldn't be staying there for a long time either? Like you were saying that, like, if you're there for a year and go, that causes abandonment issues. Like, could you clarify that, please?
Staying for a long time is damaging because of the sense of abandonment that the kids feel. But we have volunteers that come for a day, for a half day, when the kids are back from school, and they might do things like help them with their English, put in a crop, go to the rubbish dump with them, help them with their English language, and they have from 1 to 5 to engage with the kids. The kids get a lot out of it, and so do you, but the kids know you're only going to be there for half a day. So that's the two types that we can cope with, yeah? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so something like 3 months or something like that, that's too long? Or?
For us it is, because I know my children well, but if you're interested, contact me, because I know of other orphanages that will take volunteers for maybe just a month or whatever. So if you're interested, contact me and I'll put you in touch with them. But I know my kids would feel abandonment, but these other organisations might not see it my way. Everybody's different.
Just wanted to ask you where you see the future of Sunrise.
What
Your organisation, what do you see as the future for it?
Well, the future, the Cambodian government has asked us already to take over 2 more orphanages that didn't pass the minimum requirement investigation. And we really want to do this, but we can't do it without money. I am probably 9 months of the year, 4 months of the year travelling, begging people for money. I've just written to a Saudi Arabian prince, where I'll give you his name later on, who's giving, I've just written to him, he's given billions away, and I've written him a proposal that you bring tears to his eyes. I've written to Gina Reinhardt, I've written to Twiggy Forrest, I've written to Mel Gibson, I've written to Nicole Kidman, I've written to any celebrity that I can get through to, but it's not easy getting people to give you money. And that's the most depressing thing I find, is what's going to happen when I'm too old to raise the money. But I do believe in the universe. During the time of the coup, I had 60 kids, I had no water, no food for them, $80 in my bra and half a tank of gas. And I thought, it's all over, I'll have to go home, can't feed myself, let alone the children. And out of nowhere, a $10,000 cheque came anonymously. I still don't know who it came from. And I have faith, because of what I'm doing, that the universe won't let it all fall into a heap. But it's just making me sweat for the last minute. So
Thank you.
I know it's going to survive, but it's going to be a hard row.
Thanks.
And if any of you've got rich parents out there, tell them that, okay?
And then over this side, please.
Amanda Caspava, United States. So I think what I'm struggling here with is we come from a very privileged place, whether it is the US or Western countries, and I'm struggling with this idea of how do we, as the leaders of tomorrow, make students care? Because we can share this vision, but I feel like sometimes even some sitting in these seats just don't care.
Yeah, that's it. When I was growing up, my family didn't give. We weren't taught giving. But this generation seems to be more open to giving. I think it's awareness. You can, through social network, show the plights of people in other parts of the world that might move you. But even me, when I was younger, I remember a very, very moving documentary from Romania about orphanages in Romania, and the conditions were just deplorable, and I sat and wept, and then I went and had my dinner. So we've got to be moved by something. We've got to find ways to move the young, to make them do what needs to be done in this world. It's hard to tell people that the best joy in life that you can ever have is giving. You sound, like you're preaching, but I have to tell you, my materialistic life pales into insignificance to the one that I have now. I live in a wooden house with the kids, and my life has changed. Not a lot of people would want to live the way that I do, but the joy I get out of giving and having it return in love is beyond description. But you've got to find a way to motivate them, expose them to poverty in other parts of the world.
As a volunteer, I like to travel a lot, and I volunteer and I do projects in a lot of different countries where I'm clearly an outsider, where I'm clearly someone from a developed country coming in to these countries and wanting to help. But I've been met with a lot of stigma from previous from their experience with previous volunteers from developed countries. So I was wondering what your experience with this may have been and how you dealt with it.
You're saying that other Western volunteers criticise you?
No, the community, so maybe they have...
well, I know what that is.
Yeah.
They feel that you are looking down on them and that you are doing a service rather than out of love. You're doing it because you're being pushed into it or to get credits for your paper at school or whatever. When you volunteer, you've got to really get down and volunteer. When I go to the villages, I squat and talk to the old people. I shit behind their houses like they do. I eat the food that they eat. Even if I know it's going to make me sick, I'll hold filthy, dirty babies. You've got to make them believe that you feel that you are no better than them. That's the secret. If you walk in there with a nice gold chain or something like that, or often it's hard not to show the disgust on your face when you see that kind of poverty and filth. You've got to get rid of that.
Thank you.
Based on your presentation and the examples that you've given, my concern is about I want to find out exactly how are you engaging leaders and other people in issues to do with child trafficking.
Okay. Yep.
I know you are dealing with children who are prone and who are at the very risk of being trafficked to other places.
Okay. I tell you what we do. We have 3 times a year workshops. People come in from other parts of the world with structured workshops. They could be, one that we're having this October is how to be an entrepreneur. We have workshops on sex education, family planning, how to look for a partner, the things you should look for, how to choose your university degree, how to save your money, how to handle your finances. So every year, my children are just from the backs of buffaloes. They don't know anything. So we have regular workshops to bring them into the real world so that when they do reach 18 or 23 and they've got their degree, they have some knowledge on how to live in society. We really do need these workshops. And with the ones happening in October, we're going to be asking some of our sponsors to give us seed money to set up a kid who maybe wants to have a bike repair shop, or a girl who wants to start a coffee shop or a beauty salon. And we're hoping that we'll have sponsors that will give us a couple of $1,000s to set them up, and then they will gradually pay them back. Because it's great when you can get kids jobs, but it's even greater if you can set them up in their own businesses and give them that kind of pride.
My question is it a really good thing for a university to send university students like us to do the volunteer program? Since I'm a volunteer, represented by our school to go to Cambodia for 1 month last summer, and I feel that we done something like when we go back to Taiwan, we raise money for them and we gave some sharing and raise the awareness. But when we go back to, when we are leaving, those kids are they are crying to us, and I'm not sure if that is a really good thing for the student to go volunteer program.
Yes, it is. What's the name of the place you volunteered in Cambodia? New Hope for Cambodian Children? No. Okay, what you need to do, there are 600 orphanages in Cambodia. You find the ones, you go onto Google and you put Cambodian orphanages, and then you refine it to those that are looking for volunteers. And then you will find the ones that are looking for people like you and your students to go to. There's so much help that is needed. So, and Google, apart from what our friend earlier was saying, is a really good engine to help you find what you want to do. So look under Cambodian orphanages, and then look under ones that take volunteers and the types of volunteers they're looking for. Okay?
Yeah, but I mean, we already done that, but at the time we are leaving, we are not able to stay years, but probably a summer vacation. But because there are a lot of programs like that, but is that really a good thing for us to go to that kind of program, or are we actually hurting those children?
Not all orphanages have Skype, but many do, and I do. Kids love to get emails from people that they know outside of Cambodia that they know are thinking about them. Okay?
Thank you so much.
When you leave the orphanages, it's a starting of your journey. Go back to Taipei and do something. Connect to them. Build houses or build library for them.
Yeah.
It's not the end, it's just the beginning.
Yeah. And raise money for the places that you volunteer in. That's what they need most.
I was very curious to find out about the running of Sunrise itself, because you would have to collaborate a lot with local authorities and local communities. And one of the things is really about creating that sense of ownership so that you don't feel like, you are a separate entity to some extent. So how do you go about building that collaboration and working with them?
I have excellent relationships at the highest level in government with the Prime Minister, with Ministry of Social Affairs, government officials. I entertain them, I take them out for dinner and for lunch. I talk about the problems that we've had in the orphanage and seek their advice on how to solve them. And I really consider myself a Khmer. And what the Cambodians like about Sunrise is that there's no expensively paid salaried expats running around. They like that we don't change the children to Christianity. They like that we have a cultural program with the Cambodian music and dance. One of the big things Hun Sen, the Prime Minister, likes, he said that he sees the country directors of World Vision and Red Cross driving around in a Lexus, and he says, I like Mum Geraldine because she's driving a 14-year-old Toyota RAV. So with the government people, it's important that you make relationships with them and that they know you don't see them as there and that you are here just because you're a foreigner. Big secret in all countries is to feel level and the same with the people, not to make them feel that you're higher than them.
What I just wondered about is how much time does it take you like to spend on administration work and fundraising? Because it seems like really a lot, a huge sum. So.
I don't do any administration. My staff does all of that. But fundraising, writing grants and proposals and begging letters to people. I go to Australia and I speak to boardrooms to get staff giving programs. I speak to women's groups. I go to churches. I go to the malls and hand out brochures. I all but stand on the street corner. So fundraising for me is my biggest commitment to the children, because if I don't get them the money, we're not going to be there. So I spend an awful lot of time fundraising and worrying about the fundraising. But luckily I don't have to worry about the administration. Like I'll have been away a month when I get back this time, and the kids hate it when I leave. And they say, why do you have to go away all the time, Mum? And I said, Mum's got to go and get the money. And they said, well, why don't you go and get the money and bring it back here and you won't have to go all the time? They think I've got a big pirate's chest with gold and emeralds and that I just go home and get a handful of it and bring it back. They don't understand how hard I have to work to get the money. But yeah, fundraising is not my most rewarding part of what I do, but the most necessary of what I do.
Thanks.
Since most of us are still in university, do you have any tips? How can we start and to save money and start to help people out there? And I have another question. If only you can start from a really young age, what would you do? Thank you.
I'm trying to teach my children to start giving, even though they might be 7 or 8 years old. I tell them at school they can help a backward child with their homework. In the villages, I tell them they can carry a bucket of water from the well to an old person's house. I tell them they can sweep the pagoda and keep it clean, take a sick person to hospital. These are real grassroots things that I bring up my children to make them feel good about themselves and for the surrounding villages to know that we are part of them. You're never too young to start doing something for other people. It can be as simple as just carrying a bucket from a well. I was 50 when I started, but I often think, oh, why didn't I do this when I was 30? But the 18 years I had in the Department of Foreign Affairs taught me an enormous amount of knowledge about countries, about politics, about everything that I needed to know to do what I do in Cambodia. And then when I worked for 8 years in the bank, it taught me how to handle money and how to get money. So I couldn't have done it before because I was too busy getting the experience together to do what I started at 50. But I do wish that I had all that experience earlier, but that wasn't the way it was.
I would like to ask about you have built your foundation until quite a huge organization. So is getting fundings of $140,000 is not an easy job. Do you have any sustainable solution for your organization?
We have quite a lot of people in Australia mainly who bequest money in their wills, but they're not even sick. Okay, I've got to wait for them to die. So there is, it sounds terrible, doesn't it? But there is quite a few $1 million sitting in wills that we will be able to get our hands on at some stage. We do have a couple of large sponsors that give us, like Macquarie Bank in Australia gave us $204,000 last year. Computershare, Australians here will know, fund our third orphanage and gave us $2 million to build our third centre. But it is hard getting corporate people to give money. They're too busy having a line of Coke and having a good time. But we do have a few faithful corporations that we can go back to. But, you know, I read about people who are giving money away, like the Saudi Arabian prince, and he gets a letter on his desk the next day. Okay? And I'm also trying through Gates and Warren Buffett But you can imagine there's thousands of requests going through, so it's a constant battle of writing grants and proposals for people that have got the money. The money's there, you just got to get it.
What you do and what you've done is extraordinary. I mean that not as a compliment or flattery, but that there are so few people doing what you do and helping people to the extent that you do in the world. I would imagine if there were more people like you, many more people, that we'd be well on the way to solving many of the social problems and humanitarian issues in the world. My question for you is, why are there so few people like you in the world?
Maybe they're already happy in their jobs and in their families and in their marriages, that they don't feel the need to step right out of it. I had a loving family, but they were used to me being away, so that wasn't an issue. I hated the jobs that I had, so it was easy to walk away from them. I was married to a Shiite Muslim from Iran, and that clearly wasn't going to work. So I don't really feel that I had to really sacrifice a lot. I had a couple of old ladies in Adelaide come up to me in the street one day and they said, "Oh, Geraldine, we think you're marvellous. You've sacrificed your life for the children of Cambodia. We want to write to the Pope and see if we can get you sainted." And I said, "Send him a copy of my book and let me know how you go, because I'm anything but a saint. I would hate to be seen as one of these bleeding heart do-gooders, because everything I do is really for myself, because I wanted children and I'll do anything to get them. And when you get them, you have to look after them. So it's not a sacrifice to do what I do. It is a joy. I've sacrificed nothing. But that's not something you can teach. You have to find that out yourself."
Thank you.
I'm helping her to get money from Jackie Chan.